welcome to the Briefing Room. I'm your host, Bill Froehlich from WTCM Radio News, and it's our weekly roundup of stories making headlines across northern Michigan, but also with those folks who are helping to make those stories possible. We've got a theme show today, a little different take on the Briefing Room. I want to welcome our guests. We've got Gary Howe, a freelance writer and a freelance photographer with us. Welcome back. You've been in before. Good to see you again.
Thanks.
And Jan Michael Stump from the Record Eagle, photographer there. Welcome to you, Jan.
Thank you.
Good to have you guys in. We're talking, as I said, a little different take this week. Talking all about photojournalism and what kind of goes on behind the story. So we won't really spend a lot of time talking about news making headlines this week. We want to talk about the photos that go with those stories on any different number of occasions in any different way. Jan, let me start with you because as the new guy at the table, we want to just kind of give a little introduction. Tell us about how long you've been at the paper, how long you've been a photographer.
Well, I've been at the Record Eagle for about 6.5 years now. I've been a professional photographer for, I guess, about a decade, a little over a decade. I worked at a paper in Birmingham, Alabama before moving back to Michigan. I'm from Detroit originally. And
enjoying it so far?
Yes, love it. I love it.
It's still going well?
Mm-hmm.
Good. Well, take us through your average day. I mean, how do you get those assignments? Are you out with a reporter, a writer? Do you go out on your own? What's an average day look like for you at the paper?
Most of the time I go out on my own after talking with reporters and editors about the stories we're working on for the day. We'll kind of plan ahead, sometimes several days before, sometimes just the morning, depending on how soon we learn about stories and when we start working on them. But an average day, I'll come in the morning and look at what's on the schedule and talk with reporters and editors about what we're shooting and what the stories are, and we'll go out and shoot the stories, anywhere from 1 or 2 to some busy days, 4 or 5, 6 assignments in a day. The split is probably about 70-30 between stuff that's the reporters will request or assign, and
right.
stuff that myself or the other photographer, Keith King, will find on our own. And once we've taken all our pictures, we'll go back to the newsroom and edit our photos and talk with editors about which ones we like and which ones will work best for the paper.
Do you, when you set out, how many, what's the percent of the time when you know in your head this is what I'm going after versus when you get there, it kind of just unfolds before you? And I imagine a lot of it changes, but just is there a general rule where this is what I want to get before you walk out the door?
I try to have an idea of at least what's going to happen, but very rarely do things go exactly as planned. So it's there's always surprises, and I think that's kind of an important part of the job, is being prepared for things to change on the fly and react and capture those moments too.
We're going to take a look at some of the photos from these two guys here in just a moment. Gary, as a freelance photographer, tell us where we've maybe seen some of your work and what you're doing. Kind of keep busy on that front.
Yeah, locally, Edible Grand Traverse is a consistent client of mine. Record Eagle occasionally, and then Detroit Free Press or Detroit News if they need a stringer up north. And then New York Times when they cover something in northern Michigan, which can be a big geography sometimes. So they type in 49686 or whatever zip code, and they come up and I show up. So I'll get sent up to UP sometimes. Or
I think I remember you telling me something along those lines last time. They say, hey, we need you to swing over to Marquette and grab this.
No, actually it was Green Bay.
Okay.
And I was like, you probably have somebody closer. I'm flattered, but
I don't have the sense that just the how
it's not 50 miles.
Right.
So yeah, it's funny. He was talking about the story beforehand, and just recently I was shooting a story, and it was a freelance job. So the day came, I had to go. I was going to be there at 11 o'clock, but I realized they'd never sent me the story. I had no idea what the story was about. So luckily, on the way up, I finally got a hold of the writer. It's like, I just need something here. I have no idea what I'm going to shoot. So it was kind of, sometimes it is very last minute, like, okay, I know where to be, but
What am I doing?
Yeah, what's the point of this story? Yeah.
Gotcha. For both of you guys, what do you come back with in terms of photos? You know, for Jan, we may see 1, 2 photos in the paper for any given story. You know, maybe you have a little more freedom with how many you get to use, Gary. But do you come back with 200 images and you've got to pick? What kind of a process is that to just kind of go through those, Jan?
Yeah, there's times when you come back with just a couple dozen. Just a lot of it depends on how much time you have to spend working on the story. There's, like I said, a few dozen to hundreds, you know, and occasionally 1,000 or more if I get really trigger happy. You know, we'll come back and sit down and you have an idea. Typically, when you come back, there's a few frames in mind that you think might work out, but it's never the same as when you see them on a big screen. I've had plenty of times when you can look at the back of your camera and think that looks great, and you get back and see it on a screen and it's not quite in focus, or there's something weird in the background that just makes you not want to use it.
Yeah, when I really clicked for me, I had a good photo editor at the Free Press, Rodney Curtis. So I had a job to go up on top of Mackinac Bridge. So he was excited about the story just because it's a fun story. Not many people get to do it. And I was a little apprehensive because I'm scared of heights. But you know, he called me I was driving back, and he called. And he's like, his first question was, "So what shot? What shot do you remember?" You know, because he was a really good photo editor. So that's just great to be put in that position. Like, show me your best. Like, what's in your heart? What's in your heart? You know, and you know, and it's like, I don't really. It's kind of like there was 2 though. So when I got home back to the computer and doing the process, it's really those 2 stood out, and everything else was, you know, to tell the story, and not uninformative or a bad photo, but there's always those 1 or 2 photos that kind of pop out.
Everything comes together, and sometimes you know it when you've shot it, and sometimes it doesn't really hit you until you're back editing.
And you learn to trust your instinct. Like, just relax, let the flow happen, realize you've been here 1,000 times, and just serendipitously it'll happen. So you don't have to find the story as much as just let it come and be ready technically to take the photo. But you know, aside from that, you just kind of let the story unfold, and it'll all take care of itself. And shoot when you have the instinct to shoot, basically.
You get a lot of good photos that you like that maybe fall by the wayside or don't make it because of the way the reporter has written the story, and that's just not going to flow with your favorite picture, or you know, something along those lines? Or is that maybe a disappointing part of the job where, God, I got a great photo and it's never going to see the light of day?
Yeah, usually more so because of space restrictions, but it's nice having a website where we can put together a photo gallery if we've got, you know, a number of photos that can't make the paper. But there are plenty of times when you know you have a spot for 1 photo and you've got 2 or 3 that you love, and you got to pick one. It's tough.
Like picking your favorite child? Or?
Yeah, pretty much. Usually you bring a couple other people over and say, help me pick the best one.
Well, yeah, that always happens, actually. I mean, there's always some photos that kind of get cut, and a lot of times it's due to the medium, not just space, but also the medium. Like, if you're shooting in a real glossy magazine, you can kind of run different photos than if you're just running black and white on newsprint. There's just a little bit more gravitas to some of them. So depending on, you know, I think about that when I'm shooting is, how can this be, what medium is it? How is it likely to be used in design? You know, if I'm shooting for a magazine that I know likes to run text over photos, I'll purposely shoot with a lot of negative space, you know, and pull back maybe sometimes just to allow that negative space. So I'm not always shooting just for that amazing photo that all photographers would love. A lot of times I have to like consciously think about, okay, they're going to design this for their magazine, which is a lot different than just running a gallery shot. So that has to come into the, you know, I don't think about it when I'm shooting, but I think about it before the assignment, kind of thing.
Gotcha. Well, let's take a look at some of the photos from these 2 gentlemen. I want to start with maybe Gary and some of the photos from the New York Times. You talked about, you brought a few of them to share with us. So let's take a look at some of those now. One of them, State Theater assignment, I assume for the film festival?
Actually, no. I think that was just a Traverse City. You land in Traverse City for a day.
Oh, okay.
So you leave Traverse City, Cherry Capital Airport. What are you going to do for the day? So, and luck, you know, I didn't have to go search too far. They kind of had a list of places that they were going to go to. So I can't remember the name of the art gallery downtown. But the main gist was focus on food. So Manna, the Cookhouse, and beer, Right Brain Brewery.
Okay.
So, that's a fun job. You get to go around for a day to these different places that I frequent already.
I was going to say places that's probably a nice, easy assignment in some ways. You know what you want to do anyway.
Yeah, in some ways. But then the challenge is how to see it different than when I'm going to Right Brain and putting down a few pints. Like, how do I go there and actually, okay, how am I going to communicate this is a fun place to be, this is a good place to be? It's not editorializing, but it's the theme of the story is tourism, and so you don't want to show the the downside of Traverse City.
Right. Did they tell you, a day in Traverse City, please hit these 5 places, or did they say
that
go
assignment?
Pick 5 places.
That assignment it was already written, so I was just
okay.
there to. So I had the copy of what they were looking at, but like the art gallery shot. I was in there for a long time because how do you make an art gallery interesting? It's interesting when you're there to view the art, but as a photo, what do you do? So, it took a while for me to get the person who was managing it that day to kind of sit on a bench for a portrait that wasn't really a portrait. I didn't stage it. I just wanted her to engage her in that way and ended up getting a good shot out of it. So
There's a lot of waiting.
Stand around
Sometimes
and wait.
you wait for something to happen, and sometimes it happens quickly, and sometimes you're there for an afternoon. But if the photo works, then it's worth the wait.
Waiting for people to relax a lot too.
Forget that
Pretend
you're
you're
there.
not there. Yeah, I can imagine that too. Jan, let's take a look at some of the photos you brought. I appreciate you sharing those with us as well. And let's just have you tell us what we're looking at.
This was from Hurricane Katrina. When I worked in Alabama, the paper sent a reporter and I down to the coast before the storm, and we kind of rode out the storm in a shelter, and then proceeded to get out early in the morning and travel and cover as much ground as we could in southwest Alabama. And this was off of Dauphin Island, which is a barrier island a couple miles off the coast. And the whole island, the whole west side of the island had been just stripped from the storm. And shifted to several hundred yards. There were house pilings that were now several yards out in the water where the homes used to be. And that was a shot of an oil rig that had been basically beached.
Wow.
And it was it's one of those instances where there's just damage everywhere, and it's hard to get a sense of the enormity of what was going on. And especially at that point, we were just starting to hear about what was going on in New Orleans, and you shoot what you can, and that photo I think kind of gave a good sense of the scale of the destruction. But that photo ran all over the world. It was Le Monde in France and Business Week, and
but you can see the vulnerability in the man too. That's what I like. The way he's standing is kind of staggering, like just waking up after the storm. That's the crux of that for me.
And that was a lot of people were kind of doing that, just walking around looking at the destruction. They all had this kind of sense of disbelief, and their shoulders were kind of hung a little bit, and just a dazed look.
I imagine it's rewarding, like you said, to see it kind of go worldwide. But I also imagine, just from what I've covered as a journalist, it's got to be exhausting in a lot of ways to go through something like that. You're working, you're taking pictures, but it takes a lot out of you, especially in an emotionally charged environment like that, right?
Yeah, it was the reporter and I basically lived in my car, in my Jeep, for several days while covering it. There was no real good places for food or gas, and part of us felt bad because we knew that when we were done reporting, we could go back to Birmingham, and we knew that our homes were still there, and that we would have electricity and whatnot. So it's kind of humbling. You at one point you're there to tell the rest of the world what's going on, and it's an important story. Hey, this is much bigger than anyone thought, and these people need help. On the other hand, one of the worst feelings was we waited in line for several hours at a gas station and had just finished topping off our tank. When they shut the tanks off, they ran out of gas. And the guy behind me had driven in from Mississippi, and just was beside himself. He didn't know what to do. He said, I've got no home, I've got no gas, I've got nothing left. What am I going to do? And you feel bad. I was using that tank to go home and sleep in my bed that night.
On that note, let's take a break here on the briefing room. When we come back, we'll switch gears a little, show some more of the photos from Gary and Jan. We'll talk about some of the lighter moments across northern Michigan as well after this break here on the briefing room. We'll be right back.
What is Up North TV?
It's TV that you do.
You pick the topic.
You write the script. You run the camera.
You edit the video.
It's your vision.
Your perspective.
Your story.
Commercial free.
Free speech.
What is Up North TV?
It's me.
It's you.
It's all of us.
View us on Analog 97.
Cable digital too.
Digital 992.
UpNorthMedia.org.
Welcome back to the briefing room. I'm your host, Bill Froehlich from WTCM Radio News. We're talking today about photojournalism, something I don't have to do a lot of on the radio. So it's good to have Gary Howe and Jan Michael Stump with us, photographers, freelance photographer, and Jan with the Record Eagle. Guys, before the break, we were talking about some of the photos that you guys have been involved with, kind of behind the lens, obviously. What do you take away from a shoot, a scene? What stands out for you in any given moment, any given day? Is it really hard to, maybe it's hard to pinpoint something like that, but Jan, you said, sometimes you'll do 5, 6 in a day. Sometimes you'll just be at one shoot for a day, depending on that. Mm-hmm. That make it more challenging, just in terms of what goes into your given day?
Yeah, I would say so. The biggest thing for me, I think, is capturing a moment, that can really help tell the story. And there's times when people are kind of aware that you're there covering the event and are a little self-conscious about it. And there's times where they're just oblivious and are more relaxed. And I can see the photo here from the Gaylord Alpenfest where it was the knee contest, and the judges. Sometimes you can get more out of a photo by not showing the obvious side. It's showing people's reaction to the event or what's happening, and those girls, they were laughing their heads off.
Oh, that's funny. It's the knee contest, like you say. You don't even see the knees.
Yeah, sometimes you don't need to see the knees to get the gist of the story.
All right, tell us about this one, because I know we're laughing here too.
This is the Sutton's Bay Laughter Club, and they meet and go through a number of I guess routines you could call it, and they just laugh, and they feel it helps them physically and emotionally and spiritually. And I mean, you could tell a difference. Everyone was much more relaxed and in good spirits at the end of the session, and they just get.
Were you able not to laugh?
It was hard.
Because I shot laughing yoga once and I couldn't.
Yeah.
My cameras were all shaky because I couldn't stop.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you find you're just smiling, the whole time.
That's neat. Gary, let's run through some of your photos as well, and a lot of what you've done around northern Michigan as well. Where's this one from?
This is at Bay Harbor.
The yacht club?
The yacht club or the equine
or the equestrian
club.
club.
Equestrian club, thank you. They do a horse therapy it's not therapy for horses, it's therapy for people. So this is just a touching moment. A lot of the, excuse me, a lot of the people develop real close relationships with the different horses because the horse therapy continues on long term, so it's not just a one-day thing. So she had a breakthrough with that particular horse, and the horse just kind of came over and started nudging her, just like a puppy would.
Yeah.
So, I chose to crop in really close so you don't have the eyes of the horse and things like that. But so that was in a series of photos. Part of this is another one of those. So it's a group exercise. So there's the individual part, then there's the group exercise. So this kind of I needed to show that there were teamwork going on with the horses.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
For those two photos, for example, that you sent us, and same question for your Alpenfest. You guys sent us a couple that you really loved, but how many did you end up taking that day for a story like that?
For the horse therapy, I shot a lot actually. I was there for 3 or 4 hours, and then it was potentially a slideshow for the New York Times. Ended up not being one, but so I was trying to tell a series of stories, and so I was shooting in batches of 3. I think I mentioned that earlier. I try to capture a moment in three images really, and so I had kind of a series going.
Beginning, middle, end.
Yeah, so for sending in photos today to look at from that shoot, there's about 20 that I could have sent in that I really liked, because I worked really hard at that job, just because the context of the situation, the people, just the emotion that was there. So it was kind of nice to kind of dive into it.
But 3 to 4 hours, that's what, 100 pictures?
That
you ended up
200 or 300 maybe.
At least?
Yeah. It's not the time, it's not even the number of photos, to tell you the truth. I mean, you can spend a half hour working on one shot and you only take 2 or 3 frames, just because, in that situation I wasn't shooting as much, maybe because it was a quiet, intimate moment that these people were doing with the horse therapy, so I didn't want to be a distraction. So I was consciously just trying to really choose wisely when I shot. So I wasn't just, I didn't have it on rapid fire, and I lost a few good shots because it was dark. The lighting wasn't great, so because I was being very selective, I missed a few, because you get home, you open it up on a big screen, and that's not even nearly in focus. But I kick myself. Those are those kick yourself moments. But
yeah. Alpenfest, I imagine that's a little different. You can take as many as you want. People don't seem to care.
Well, they don't care, and there's so many different things going on. I mean, that wasn't the only event I shot that day, and so we did a photo gallery from a number of different things going on there. So I had plenty of photos just from the knee contest, because people kept coming up, and you shoot some of the contestants and some of the judges, and that just was the photo that really stood out to me, is they reacted the most to that contestant. And
well, and something like that too, there's so much going on, not just in that one event, but there's 5 or 6 different things going on a day up there. So you could do a full page. Yeah, I mean, you could do any number of things throughout the day. How important is the Record Eagle website then for you to do, like you mentioned earlier, a photo gallery where you can share more than that one photo?
It's great having that resource for galleries. There's plenty of stories that we can get one photo in the paper, but sometimes there's more that can further tell the story. And the Laughter Club story was actually done. I shot it we did a photo page in the paper, but then also a gallery online, and had audio with it too. Did an audio slideshow, so you could hear the people laughing and talking about what these sessions had done for them and what it meant to them. And it's nice to be able to have just another, I guess, tool in your kit like that to know you can expand upon what's in the paper.
Yeah. Well, let's take a look at some of these other photos in the closing minutes we have here on the briefing room. Talk a little bit about what else kind of goes on behind the lens there.
Well, this was a shot from an Alabama football game that I think is still one of my favorite sports shots, and I was kind of amazed I got it. I looked at the screen and saw that it was a full frame, but with a very long lens. The Alabama player, Tyrone Prothro, literally reached around the defender and caught the ball, and they tumbled head over heels, and he held onto the ball and the defender. And wow. the play is, they've memorialized it in the Alabama Football Hall of Fame, and there was only a couple of us photographers that were on the sidelines in position to get that shot, and we all kind of looked at our camera and said, "Did you get it? Did you get it?" "Oh yeah." And I just ran back to the workroom and in the middle of the game and sent the photo off, because I didn't want to risk having the card get corrupted or drop the camera or something. I said, I don't want to lose this. So.
But even more importantly on that shot, I mean, I don't even really care about the storyline. It's the universal. It's a universal image. I mean, you got this struggle, sport, just mashed up there. Really, there's really, if you don't know the players, there's no identity, so you don't really need one.
It still says a lot.
Yeah.
Nice. All right, who's next?
This is my first sports shot. This is in Gansu province. It's a Tibetan area of China. I don't know, for me this is, again, it's showing, I guess I'm taking this shot, and this is one of the first shots I ever took where I had an audience in mind, in terms of, okay, why would I take this shot? It just shows, a situation that we're not used to. We don't usually see Tibetan monks playing basketball. I mean, that's the obvious one, but there's a whole story behind it that, you know, I could go into. But so I was kind of shooting a series. That was one of them, you know, of these monks, Tibetan monks, where we have this vision of Tibet, and it's pretty much smashed. I mean, they live as normal. That night, I went to a World Cup, the finals of the World Cup at a cafe, where two sides, the German side and the Brazil side, who were rooting for the World Cup, you know, we're just as raucous as all can get out, and they're Tibetan monks. So, you know, there's a lot of good photos from that experience.
Nice. All right, let's pull up another one here, and I'm gonna have to defer to our control room here to give us this one. Looking like the Mighty Mac.
It was. We spent a day up there for the bridge's 50th birthday a few years ago, and yeah, we climbed up to the tower, the south tower, and it was very cloudy and foggy on the UP side. And I thought it just kind of had this otherworldly look to it. You know, it just seems like this bridge goes off into the fog, and we spent about an hour up there, and
wow,
it's very high up.
It is.
I like that. It does
But
kind of look
beautiful.
like it kind of goes into the
Eternity.
eternity. Nice, and you've been up there too.
Yeah, I think for the same year for the Free Press.
Okay.
Yeah, it's spooky up there. But so I had to, I'm really scared of heights. And get a back end to the story. I get the call from the Free Press. First question, are you scared? How do you feel about bridges? And freelancer, you just say yes. You don't show fear. And
I love bridges.
Well, I'm like, yeah, I can do that. How about heights? Really high bridges? Yeah, I can do that. Not knowing, you know, the Big Mac. So it's kind of funny as a story, as the starts telling me what the job is. I'm like, do I have to climb those cables? Like,
Yeah.
how am I getting up there?
And I'm generally not afraid of heights, but when you peer out, you first come through that hatch on the top, and you realize you're, you know, hundreds of feet above the straits and looking at Mackinac City.
It's moving.
It's it's swaying in the wind.
For me, it was I just kept looking through the viewfinder, and then I had no fear, no problems. The minute I took down to kind of take it all in, I started getting panicky, so I just kept shooting. So I have a lot of wasted shots of that day because it was my crutch. Sorry.
I was more afraid I was going to drop something, like a pen or a notebook or a camera, and have to explain, you know, why your pen penetrated someone's windshield on driving across the bridge.
High velocity projectiles.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, in the closing moments we have here, guys, you know, we've talked about the job, the challenges, but tell me what's been most rewarding as a photographer. Gary, what do you take away from that as the best part of the job?
You know, for me, it's the communication, and it's the communication I have doing the story. Like when you're spending time with people and getting to know them, I think that's the most critical part. So the camera for me is secondary. It's just a vehicle to kind of get to hear people's stories, and not always in terms of, you know, verbal exchange. You know, sometimes it's just being present with other people, and that's an experience that I think is the most rewarding. You know, I'm not really heavy into the technical side of photography, to tell you the truth. So I'm really into that process of shooting, and I just love that moment when you kind of have nervous, maybe you don't want to do it that day, whatever, you get out of the car or show up and you walk inside, then all that goes away. And you're just kind of there present with other people's stories, which is really fascinating.
Jan, how about you?
It's the people. You know, you're constantly exposed to just all kinds of walks of life and different stories, and everyone has a story. It's fun to travel all over this region and get to meet the people that, you know, I may not otherwise get to meet, you know, simply because I have a camera and we'll travel.
Well, guys, I appreciate your time. I respect what both of you do, and it's great to tell stories through the lens as well. I really appreciate you sharing it with us.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. That'll do it for us this week here on The Briefing Room. I'm Bill Froehlich. Hope you'll tune in again if you're joining us late to a rebroadcast, or join us online as well. And we'll see you next week right here on The Briefing Room.